I go to a lot of films I shouldn't go to.
Yeah.
Because I try to watch everything.
Well, that's admirable. I mean,
Yeah.
there are times when, I mean, I know maybe you get some invitations to different screenings and things like that, which is very cool. But, I'll see them on Instagram, and sometimes I'm sort of like, okay, that movie, all right. And it's no judgment at all.
No, but sometimes I go because I am invited, and then I go, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, or I'm pleasantly surprised, or especially, with like the multiverses that exist, and I'm just like, but it's sometimes it's interesting to watch because I feel like one of the things that you always talk about in the podcast is like how when people are making films outside of the Hollywood system, and like what works inside of the Hollywood system is really convoluted.
That's a very good segue.
Oh,
actually. Oh, hey, Mariana.
Oh, hi.
Hey. Do you know what I need?
What?
A breath of fresh movie.
Oh, me too.
Yay! Oh my God, so exciting.
That's a movie I like to see.
Anyway, this is a breath of fresh movie.
Hi.
Yeah.
My favorite pod.
Oh, that's sweet.
True.
Is it true?
Yeah, it really is.
All right, I might press you.
Come look at my feed.
No, that's amazing. And I'm sitting here across from Mariana Da Silva. We're going to talk about a movie neither one of us has ever seen before. I'm doing this a little differently because Chelsea is off this week. Chelsea's dealing with some serious health stuff, so we're giving her some time off, and we're wishing her well. So that's all that's going on. And Marianne was the only person I asked to come in and join me for this, and we met through film, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the purity of just loving cinema. So I feel like this is totally appropriate for you to be here.
I remember one time, because I feel like we definitely immediately bonded over film. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time I was walking by a movie theater, and you had like a hoodie on, and there was like it was a whole day like retrospective, I feel like, of 30s for 30s or something.
Yeah, it was Ezra Edelman.
Oh, right.
The OJ doc.
Yeah. And they were showing it like back to back to back.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, and you were on the edge of your seat with this hoodie on, and you had been there for like 6 hours at this point or something like that. And I looked over and I was like, oh, she's just the best. Just the best person.
I love that you saw me in that moment. That's great. Because I remember I was like, oh, they're going to show the whole thing, but there's no way I'll make it through all that. I was like, there's no way I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
I could not tear myself away.
I know. It was such a great doc. And still a lot of those 30 for 30s in general. I mean, that one specific is incredible, but there's so many that are they're excellent. So good.
Oh yeah. They tell stories that you've just were never aware of.
Yeah.
Like your uncle or grandpa might have been like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Truly.
But yeah, there's some really wild stories.
And the footage of film, there's one called The Best There Never Was, and it's about a young player who gets injured very quickly into his college career.
Oh God.
But they show footage, and then he becomes like a sanitary worker, and totally different outcome than what he pictured for himself. But
there's a lot of that.
It was like, I thought about Friday Night Lights, which is a show that I watched as an adult because I didn't live here yet when it was out. But anyway, they show the game footage, and it's like some of the best, most incredible sports footage I've ever seen. So I really appreciate I appreciate when film meets something like a sport or something like that.
No, documentaries are powerful. We've done a couple, I feel like, on the show, but it's such a different medium that it's sort of, I don't think it's free of criticism, but I think it becomes trickier to talk about. We're not as free to like make comments, I think, because it's real people's lives, and you don't want to be insensitive.
Exactly.
But yeah, I love documentaries so
Me
much.
too.
Oh my God, I just love all of it. So today's film is the 2002 Spanish horror film Cerdita, but an English title, Piggy.
Yes.
And it's based on a short film of the same name, directed by Carlota Pereda. And oh my God.
Yeah.
This was great.
It was wild.
I'm going to go ahead and take Chelsea's checkpoint moment and say, you should stop right here. Because I don't want I don't want you to go in. Yeah.
And we should say the movie is on Hulu right now.
Yes,
so it's accessible to watch.
Absolutely.
If you're going to stop this and come back to it.
Yeah, good call. You should just go see this as pure as possible because, oh my God, I I went in with very little information, and the little information I had was immediately subverted.
Yeah. Well, and I made the mistake personally because you asked what movie we wanted to do, and I was like, we should do a Latin movie. And for some reason, because it had been recommended to me as a Latin film, as soon as it started, I was like, oh no, this is in Spain.
This is Spain.
I don't know enough about this, but I was so glad to pick it because it's so I think it really deals with like a lot of beauty standards, the beauty standards that a lot of people culturally like place on women here, everywhere. But I feel like
from the moment you're born.
Yeah, and I feel like in Spanish, there's a lot of words, particularly that are like gordita, and it's like, but it's endearing because I'm adding like an ita at the end.
Ito, yeah. It's cute.
Yeah. And then you grow up with all these complexes, and you're like, oh wait, it's because I've been called all kinds of weird names. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, they're so true. I mean, I think I read a little bit about the director, but she said, I wrote this from my reptilian brain and really just stayed true to like her and the character, and everything flowed from that, form following character and theme and all that. So I immediately noticed and loved the pink motif, like from the titles to that butcher shop with the beaded curtain. I love how many beaded curtains there were in this movie.
There were a lot of beaded curtains. Even in the end, there was the curtains in that warehouse,
right?
Which was really interesting.
Good call.
Yeah,
because it ends in a slaughterhouse, which is very like thematically completing the whole,
like a full circle.
I was pulled in immediately. I think we're confronted with. I mean, you've given a little information that we have. An overweight girl who is bullied by her friends, witnesses something, and the whole movie is set up around, will she talk, will she share, will she not? But man, I felt like in a few minutes we were so much inside this Sarah's perspective.
Yeah.
Like she, I immediately hated everybody who didn't understand her.
Same.
And
it kind of was like everybody didn't understand her.
Her
there was
parents.
no safe place for her.
Exactly.
Which was really, and I think anytime you're in a situation where your family in particular like isn't your safe space, then it's like the most isolating feeling in the world because the world is against you, it feels like, but then there's your home base as well. So it's like, where do you belong?
Yeah.
And I assume she's probably like 16, 17, I would say. So it's also that time when you're coming to terms with like who you are in the world and your place in the world. There's a lot of meat in this movie.
A lot of meat, yeah.
Which was like I was at one point a vegetarian and then started eating meat again because I grew up in Brazil, and it basically is like you have to give back your passport if you don't eat meat. But yeah, it was right away, and I think I love the full. It was. At first, you're like, this is so much of this, but also Spanish culture has a lot of meat, but it was such a carry through point, and the whole storyline of her, because her family owns a carniceria, which is a meat shop, and it talks about her hunting, right? The stuff that they're selling.
The amazing amount of exposition we get, like this girl shot rabbits herself, which means we're given this sense that she can kill, she's used to blood, but then again that it subverts it though, because she's not exactly the killer. There's this other presence, the stranger in town. Kind of thing. Oh my god.
Do we spoil stuff here? Are we allowed?
We do. Absolutely. Okay, great. Which is why we're like, okay.
Because I feel like sometimes you guys don't, and you do. You don't give away too much.
We definitely warn people, which is a good moment for, which that's what Checkpoint Chelsea and spoilers ahoy and all that. We may not talk about everything, but we will talk about anything. So say anything you want. No worries. Sometimes we start at the end. Sometimes we spoil things for other movies,
Yeah, no, and that's the fun thing about, I think, talking about film in general. It was interesting because I remember when I watched it the other day, and again, at the beginning, right away, I was in. I was like, yes, I'm in. And I then was telling somebody about it recently and was like talking about just the bullying. There's a lot of fat phobia very much is happening, and it's like I think even just the relationship of her and the other girl, Claudia.
Yeah,
that's so interesting because it seems like they were once friends, and now
they both have the friendship bracelets.
Yeah, they have the friendship bracelets, and then she now like is kind of in with the popular crowd, and
which that's such a classic coming of age trope, right? Like
big time.
Like the friend who grew up on the block with you, but then like adolescence hits and it becomes about hierarchies and who's cool, and suddenly it doesn't matter that we used to spend the night at each other's house. Like I don't know you anymore. Yeah,
it's so devastating. It's like the worst. I feel like as a teenager, it feels like the worst thing that could possibly happen.
It really does.
Yeah. It's I think it's the first heartbreak you really feel when that happens. If you haven't had I mean, it's your closest relationship. So once that goes away, and then also just the feeling that somebody telling you that society doesn't accept you, therefore they don't accept you as well. So there's a lot of that in the film. It's very present. And there's she goes to the pool.
Yeah.
There's this pool presence as well.
I mean, that's the thing. This all takes place in a very compressed timeline.
Yeah.
Because as I was reading, I was like, oh, I guess that did all happen in like one day.
Yeah.
These people come into the butcher shop, and it's this village, this rural village in Spain. So the idea of the shop is hanging on, a little bit. You know? There's some mention about like she's one of the only people that buys from us anymore. There's a sense of community and a sense of interconnectedness that's not necessarily helpful. But I think the idea that the kids you grow up with as a little one, that the whole thing follows you and follows you and follows you and never goes away. So once you're given a label in a small town, that's it. Yeah. Like you're kind of done for unless you leave.
Yeah. And everybody knows your name. Like they know your family, they know where you live. Everybody really knows each other. And everyone's so they're all in each other's business. And I also think that...
and yet they're very oblivious too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the parents are nosy but oblivious.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
There's like little hints of things. Like even there's a cop and for one moment he like calls the sheriff his dad. And then he's like, sorry, I meant general. And then you realize that they're also a father and son.
Yeah, there's a lot of filial like parents not listening to their children.
Yeah, consistently
through
the whole theme of it.
I felt like it was like Juan Carlitos. He for a moment, I really felt like, was the story going to have him empathizing with Sarah because they're both kind of in this similar situation, but it didn't go that way either. I like that here's a handsome man. No, he's not gonna. That's not the story. Going to the pool. The scene. The whole first part feels just like so grounded in reality, and the tension of her going to the pool and there's no one there. And that, like, when you're ashamed of your body, you kind of, you crave that kind of, I don't want to be seen, but I want to enjoy this thing. And I felt like all the tension and all of, like, the shame, just to even take her towel off. Yeah. And I love that this movie's completely unflinching. And, it may be a bit surprising to a viewer to see a larger woman in a bikini. It's rarely depicted,
Also, as a lead, I feel like in a movie, that's
a whole other thing.
Yeah, right. But true, and her bravery, I think, in the sense of like. You can really just see all the emotions in her so present, and she's so body. Vulnerable. Yeah,
the way she holds her arms.
The way she holds her arms, she's so completely present. And then when she is in the pool, the little moment of joy she has. Yeah. And then there's a man also in the pool with her, and the way he's lit, you never see his face. There's this like incredible, there's a backlight. There's like sun just hitting him in that place where you're like, I'm kind of seeing somebody, but am I? Yeah. And I thought too, in what I was referring to, like even her bravery is you saw a lot of anger and like hate in her, which you feel as you're watching for her with the other characters and how much they bully her. Yeah. And so
what you said about not having a safe space. Yeah. Here she is, she possibly has a moment to exist. Yeah. And even with a stranger, and then they just show up and it's just like oink oink and you know all these horrible things. And then they take it even further. The pool cue or pool whatever the fuck it is, what do you call that thing?
What is it?
It's not a strainer. whatever. The thing you use to clean leaves out of the pool. They just dump this thing on her head. And the cinematography is so great in that moment because they put you in her shoes and we're looking through the netting as she's trying to grasp for air. And it's like, if that wasn't bad enough, it's like, then they run off with all of her clothes and all her shit, which they know is going to hurt her. Like they're acting on such like, it'll be so shameful for you, like, which can't exist without a societal norm existing for her to feel that shame. And then, God, when she's walking home and then that car of guy, like, I'm like, is she going to be raped? I really was like terrified. And I think she was too. Like, and the fact that they end up letting her go or whatever, and the way she just lets go of all that emotion, the sobbing by herself, like that was intense. Like, I can only imagine how difficult a scene that must have been.
Yeah, and I felt like it really lent itself to be like an actual horror movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, this was a horror movie in the sense of the word of like society as the monster, and then a monster in society as well. I mean, like an actual person who is a monster. And then also the monster it makes you, which is like so present within the film. But yeah, I felt the same thing when I almost felt like when they take her clothes, one of the things that was so interesting to me was them knowing that she was also just seeing that she was enjoying herself and like, how dare she accept herself. And I sometimes think that no matter like who you are at that age, it's such, and this is not like apologizing for those girls in any way, but I do think that a lot of their hatred is like any moment of joy that she has, it's for them, like she doesn't deserve that joy. Yeah,
totally.
And
how dare you be happy?
How dare you be happy?
Be happy.
Like, have I not made your life miserable enough? And it's really I hated those girls.
Oh, I did too.
And it takes you to those places where you're like, those girls, like, they're just the worst people in society. They're awful. Yep. Also, the friend consistently seeing it happen, and always the director allowing her in the story, like allowing you that moment to give her to have a little bit of hope that she's gonna do something. Like,
she seems a little conflicted.
Yeah, she seems a little conflicted, but then always chooses the most evil thing. And I feel like that throughout the entire movie, even towards the end.
Yes. I mean, even at the end, I mean, that breakdown of I do everything wrong is like, oh my God, like that. Because they're still blaming her for shit.
They're still blaming her.
They are, even the other girl who was not her friend growing up gets it sooner.
Yeah, that's what's so devastating. Right. And I mean, we're going to go into it, right? Like in the movie. So she, so in it, when she's walking home after those cars stopped, she sees that the man who was in the pool has taken the girls and put them in his van and had, like, they're being kidnapped by this man. And they're calling for her to help when we just saw her calling for them to help her. And they did nothing. They took her shit, they left, and they left her to be, like, what is that, finagled? Is that a word?
Finagled
by those men in the car. She's walking barefoot in her bikini, and it took her such bravery to even put it on and go into the pool.
And the way, like, she's just trying to keep it on.
And she's just trying to keep it on. She's just trying to make it home as invisibly as possible. And in that moment, the man opens the van and gives her the towel.
He drops the towel on the ground.
So she can...
And just that, that kind of, like, hesitation, and there's this... It's like he sees her. Yeah. This is the only person who has ever seen her for who she is and helped her and decided... And, I mean, I realized that she is not a perfect person. She's a flawed individual, like we all are. But man, I gotta say, her deciding, just like the way she just waves, like thanks and goodbye to her friend, I'm kind of like, bitch deserved it.
I know that's what this movie challenges.
It challenges that exactly, and I know that's sick and not right. I mean, I think the question is, what would you have done in this situation? And I'm like, I think I would have taken the towel. I think I would have. Yeah. What I might have done after, though, is then gone to the police.
That's what I think so, too.
That's what I probably would have done.
I think so too. I think I would have probably done that. But the crazy part is, and it's such brilliant filmmaking because it takes you from a moment where you as the viewer are like, ew, these girls are disgusting. They like should rot in hell.
Yeah.
You know, like you're having that thought and then you see them
immediately getting a cup up.
Yeah, getting like potentially killed, and they're asking for help, and you just saw this other person ask them for help. So there's a part of you that is like, yeah, screw you. Like, you just let her, you know, which
you exposed her to all kinds of danger and discomfort and shame. And like, bodily
and now you
harm.
need her.
Yeah.
And why would she? Why would she help you? And then he helps her,
I know.
which puts you in an even worse position because you're like,
I know he killed somebody.
I know he's
going to kill these.
Going to kill them.
Like, and I'm generally not for men abducting women and killing them. Like, I want to make that clear.
Yeah, never.
But no.
No, truly. And the sisterhood is, I think, always like, no matter what, at least for me, as I understand, I always think like activism, feminism, all these things, they start with how we treat people.
It does.
If you're an asshole, but then you're like protesting in the street, but you're an asshole to the people who like can do nothing for you, then I'd start correcting that before going to a protest or donate to stuff. Right. But even the same with feminism, it's like, you know, how do I treat the women around me? How do I support them? It starts there. And so it really challenges that in the sense of how also women treat each other and support one another. And so when you see them going away, it's the most conflicting thing, which then leads to the rest of the film, which is her trying to be quiet about the whole thing because she's like she doesn't really know what to do. And again, she's somebody who has never been allowed to speak up. Yeah. So I think that also adds to it a lot. Like, she doesn't talk to anybody ever. No. You hardly hear her voice, actually.
Her isolation is overwhelming. Yeah. And when she manages to come home, right, from a horrible ordeal. And the first thing she does, right, is run up to the shower, which I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I would do. Also to weep. But just she doesn't get a moment's peace there. Her mother is immediate and has can't read her own daughter's emotions. Just thinks she's this dumb little strange girl that doesn't know her left from her right. Yeah, and it's so upsetting.
The way she grabs, also the way the mother grabs her and walks in. She's showering and the mom just walks in. Yeah, it's like there's no respect for her personal like body. There's no ownership of herself, which is so devastating. And then it seems like she's just trying to be quiet and she wants it all to go away, but everybody keeps coming to her to try and figure out what happened,
which has never happened.
It has never happened.
No
to
one
her.
Ever bothers with her at all. And she has this kind of little bit of power, I think, that she understands. And I wouldn't say maybe she's enjoying, but there's something. I mean, I just want to say, after that shower scene, that she then goes to her room, which if there is a safe space, that might be it. Yeah. And she goes and gets out the pink snack. And I kind of lost it in that scene. Like, everything before it was very upsetting and traumatic. But when she started to eat that pink snack cake, and then when she went back to see that post again, she holds the pain so close to her heart so that she remembers why she did what she did. Yeah. And that whole scene really just, that fucked me up. Like, I was in tears because I'm just like, this poor girl is so alone. Yeah. She is just so alone. And I hate everybody for not seeing her.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that makes it so, it puts the audience at such a conflicting place because you're just so angry at everybody for her. And I think, she's trying to keep the anger alive because I also think that she thinks that if she told anyone, nobody would listen to her. That too. Because she's been so ignored by society. She's such an overlooked person. And even in the moment that you mentioned when she's like, I can't do anything right. And that breakdown, I think it goes back to that. She's constantly told, when her mom comes into the shower, she sees that she's sunburned. Right. And she's like, oh, how could you get sunburned like this? It's like she's immediately blaming her for getting sunburned. She's immediately just, everything she does is like always on her.
Yeah, that wasn't your finest moment. Like, when are you in a rush? Like, just all these kinds of, like, I know who you are and don't even try to be different. Don't even try to grow. I mean, the And then what's interesting is that, right, I mean, by the end of the movie, we're not paying attention to her body, really. Like, not in the way we are at the beginning.
No.
But when they're at that dinner table, the TV's on in the background, and, like, her little brother doesn't help anything because he's not old enough to have any of the sensitivity. And it just, there's something about the way she's, like, holding herself, and she's trying to make herself small, it seems. Like, there's so many scenes where she's squeezing herself into, like, behind a wall or a corner. And there's some fun tension with that. I got to say, that scene with the washing machine countdown and the mother at the top of the stairs, like, oh no, she's going to come down.
I know.
That was so domestic and wonderful. Like, what a great, like, tension moment.
But also the brother, I feel like, is one thing that
he's spared.
That she spared him, and that I think about a lot also in dynamics of, like, machismo. Yeah. It's like the boy, because he's not particularly, like, he's also very young, but he's not like nobody in the family is thin. So the fact that they're always just, like, shaming her, it's bullshit because they're not, and they're all eating whatever they want. And then of course there's a moment that the police is, like, asking her questions and about her being, they keep referring to the girls missing as her friends, which is disgusting because they're obviously not her friends. Yeah. And so she finally tells her mom, like, they call me Piggy, they call me Cerda, right? Yeah. And the mom is, instead of mad at, and she said, you don't do anything about it, but the mom, it goes back to the society thing, right? Like, she says it in front of the whole town because the whole town's trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah. Why is the police at the pool? And the mom then starts taking away her food, and she's eating salad, and she's only allowed to eat salad. And it's, like, fully blaming her. But I think that the shame the mom feels in that moment is, like, how could you do that in front of everybody? How can you call me out? Yeah. How dare you call me out in front of other people? Because that is, like, the sin of, you know, of mothers. I feel like the most shameful thing.
That's a good point. Yeah. No, you raise a really good point, because she really just screams out the truth. And it is interesting how the mother on occasion does defend her daughter, but it seems like it's more about, like, a larger pride issue than it is about her daughter.
Yeah, that's, like, what I mean. And I think that's the first time you see that, where it and when she talks, when she's like, tell me where the girls are, because people start kind of realizing that she might know something, because as soon as she sees the cops, she starts puking. Yeah. Which is, like, a dead giveaway that she knows something. And the cop, one of the cop that's the son, the young one, yeah, he sees her walking home, like, disheveled, crying.
Yeah.
He asks her, are you okay? Yeah. And she doesn't even respond. She just goes straight into the shower, and she's in shock. And so and then, you know, and then he starts trying to tell his dad that he had seen her walking home in distress, and the dad, you know, right away doesn't listen, because he's like, I know her mom. You know, we know her, we know the family, they wouldn't do anything. It's so unassuming. It's a lot of people putting people in boxes based on their places in society. Yeah. And so that's, even with the guy who's a good looking young guy who hung out with the other girls, and Pedro, yeah,
he was smoking.
Yeah, he was so hot. And then and then all of a sudden he gets even hotter in the movie because he sees her.
Yes.
And
plus he shows up and gets her high for the first time. I'm like, dude, I'm in love.
Yeah, I know. I loved him. And he really has such a caring character, which in the beginning he never bullies her. You never really see him do it.
But you assume something. It's the guilt by association. Yeah.
He hangs with them.
But then when he's kind of like, you know, bullshit, I don't do that to you, you know, and but yeah, I mean, there's certain, like, but standing by and watching, you know, but I agree. I think we get a nice picture of him being empathetic, but even he has a limit. He's scared. He doesn't want to go down for it either, and that's understandable.
Yeah, because the boyfriend always gets
it's always
blamed.
the suspect.
Yeah,
husband is always the first suspect.
Oh, anytime I watch a crime thing, I'm like, have you talked to the husband?
Yeah, husband did it. Yeah,
it's true. And but just one point that I had about the machismo thing. I feel like the son is in with the parents of the poor treatment of her. Yeah, and I think a lot of times families like that, because it's still this thing where like the boy carries the name but the daughter leaves, and so therefore she's a spare,
she's an ass, like she's a loss.
Yeah, she's a loss. And so the son isn't necessarily like a fit, perfect kid, but the parents they're totally fine with him. Yeah. They coddle him, and they and she's kind of just,
she has to work in the shop.
Yeah, which makes it more. I mean, remember, in the beginning, the first time we see her brother, she's working and he's napping.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right, because she like kicks him away. And like, they're going to be so mad. I did think it was, when she's like, I need the laptop. And, he's like, nah, I'm busy. It's like, I know you watch porn on that. He's like, yeah, you do too.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it may sound odd, but the scene of her watching porn and masturbating, it's like, I don't know. There's some. I'm like really glad that scene was in there.
Me too.
Because I think there's a kind of, she's self-soothing in a lot of different ways because there's so few options, and it's like food, sex, like these things do a lot to help people, feel less bad. And I seem to remember Marlon Brando like talking about really loving his food as a child because it was a solace to him. Like he's like, oh, that never made me feel bad. That always made me feel good.
Well, and something you can control. When you're out of control, you can control what you eat. And and to your point too of how in the beginning her body's so prominent, and in the end you forget about it as the viewer. But I also think she forgets about it because she's finally in a situation where she's present with other things than what she looks like.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. And I also think that I was really glad that the masturbation scene is in there because I also felt like that was in a part of the movie where she was beginning to own her body.
Yes, absolutely. Like when she's in her bedroom, that's like the most free we see her. And isn't that so true of like so many of us when we were adolescents? Like our bedroom becomes such an important place. Yeah. And it's funny how this is a horror movie, but it's also coming of age.
Yeah.
It's like incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm fast forwarding a little bit. Well, I'm thinking about also, I like the surrealism of the bull, the wandering bull. I just thought that was like really cool. And you could read all kinds of different things into it symbolically, I suppose. But I did think the end, I still feel is somewhat ambiguous,
Oh, me too.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we can, again, we don't have to just get to the end, but I mean, I'm just thinking about the way it was shot. I was like, oh, she killed them. And then it was like, oh, she didn't. But then she leaves them. So are they going to die? Yeah. Or did she shoot, did she shoot them down and shoot that? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, and I think that moment is so powerful because so she gets the gun and she shoots the girls. Yeah. And you think that they're dead and then they're not dead. But when it's so messed up. Yeah. I love movies that make you the bad guy somehow. Yeah. Like now I'm like, my thoughts, what's going on in my super brain? Toxic. I'm so toxic. But when it seems like she's killed everybody, the man who was kidnapping the girls as well as the girls, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess this is the smartest thing to do because
witnesses. Yeah,
no witnesses. You're just going to go home. This is how to go home free. Yeah, blame the guy. Yeah. And you killed them, so now you're the hero, I guess. But it's so messed up that your brain goes there. I know. And it does because even when and because we skipped we skipped a lot, but I feel like one of the most important things when I was like retelling this movie that I said was when she's trying to because basically there's this weird love affair that happens between her and the guy. Oh yeah. And I think the thing that causes it is that he's the one who she's never been seen. Yes. And so it almost feels like, is he kidnapping the girls because he saw how awful they were to her?
I wondered that too. Yeah. I was like, wait, because he killed the lifeguard because he's in that was a great little flash. Yeah. She's swimming in the pool and she's too like in her own head and emotions to even notice that there's like a body tied down in the bottom of the water, the lifeguard, and the lifeguard's girlfriend. Yeah. And we're not really, there's no, we don't get any information about motive, like none. And I'm glad because we don't really need it. Yeah. But yeah, she gets, his first word we hear him say is her name. Yeah. And the second thing we hear him say is, "Are you okay?" Yeah. He buys her the pink snacks. I mean, I think it's more than just him taking care of a witness. Like, oh yeah. I think there's something going on there.
I thought, and now actually we're thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it more, is like, I think for you to be a serial killer, which is assuming what he is, is you are, in a way, you're angry. I mean, you probably have a lot of emotional issues and a lot of other issues, but we have to imagine it's caused by anger and it's caused by feeling of outcast. And so I feel like in a way he sees her and he sees how she's being treated, and it's like something must have happened to him where he understands, it feels like. Yeah. And so yeah, you do. That's the cool. I think that the dead bodyguard in the bottom of the water is one of the best things that could have happened, because it leads you to not feel like, oh, he's just otherwise you would have been like, he's killing these girls
just for her. Right. No, we get a sense that this guy's on, because we do have a moment with him, you know, where the guy's like, what the fuck are you looking at? You know, like he has this moment at the pool, and it is like, ooh, okay, what's this dude? Like, we immediately get a sense of like, oh, this guy's kind of a creepy presence.
Why is it? And he's like in the water. And then the girls, when they're bullying her, they say, is that your boyfriend?
Right, yeah.
And then the
guys in the street at night too, they were like, oh, like, Miss Bacon or whatever, like calling her like, oh, she got lucky, or Fatty got lucky. I don't know. It's
crazy. And so I feel like you don't really know why he's doing it till the end. You don't know why he's killing people, but it's not his story.
It's not.
And
then the way, like, I mean, that she gets a little, I saw one review describe it as she was a bit dickmatized, you know, and like, because, right, the first time somebody has acknowledged her, but they also have this intense moment in the woods, in the dark, in the silence, and the way they're close together. It's like, is he gonna kiss her? Is she gonna kiss him? Like, I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. Like, what is happening right now?
I love stuff like that. And especially because also there's nothing that bonds two people more than having a massive secret as well.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
You know, like trauma and a massive secret.
Yeah.
She's the only person who knows that he's doing this. Yeah. Because she saw him and she chose not to. And it's not even that she necessarily, I mean, she chose not to stop him, but who's to say that she wasn't the one who told? There's so much trust instantly between them, which is so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that moment in the woods. And you think, and I think what also makes the film thrilling is that the whole time you're asking yourself, is he going to kill her or is he going to kiss her?
Right.
And it's consistent.
No, it's never resolved, really. Yeah. Like, I mean, at the end, you get the sense that maybe he's sort of trying to, like, condition her into being a partner of some sort, because he's like, we'll do it together. He puts the knife in her hand, in his hand, and... You know, I don't know, weird reference to make, but there was like that season of Dexter where he had the partner who helped him kill. Yeah. It was like Julia Stiles, right? Yeah. And it kind of reminded me just a little bit of that, but I think she had to know that, like, well, this isn't a life, though. Yeah. Like, this isn't what I want either.
Well, and he kills, I mean, do you think he killed the mother? Ooh. I feel like the dad was definitely dead.
That's a good question, because he really fucks up the parents.
Yeah, so he comes to get her. Yeah. And the mom is actively being awful.
Right, because they've just come home from the police station where she's been questioned. And so again, his presence there is like, is he there because he thinks, oh, she's talked, finally I have to finish this job? Yeah. But, you know, I mean, she ends up getting into this fight with her mother who, right, like... God, she has this whole scene where she has to admit what happened to her at the pool to the police, and just, you know, the shame of it makes you not want to say anything. It's completely understandable. And then it's like they stand up to leave, her mother decides this is over, and it's like, oh, it turns out she's been menstruating, and it's gotten through, it's soaked through her pants now. And it's just like, and then her mom is like, well, not your best moment, as they're like leaving. And then she tells the hot guy and his dad, who are on their way in, oh, she just had her period, you know, better not have her on your leather seats. And it's like, what the fuck? Yeah. Who is this woman?
The mom is a bully. She is. And yeah.
And the way that Sarah screams at her. Yeah. I mean, you know, the guy's upstairs and he's already dealt with the dad, but it's like, I mean, she's screaming, I wish you were dead. Yeah. I mean, she has this strange, I mean, guardian angel's not the right word, but like, kind of, right? Like,
it's really weird, because every moment you are in the position of, any moment he comes to kill that you see, is a moment where you're wishing that person he's killing, or you're just thinking that they're the worst person in the world. So it's this kind of feeling of it's such a movie that completely puts you in a juxtaposition of where am I, like, because it caters, it makes you hate somebody and then it brings in a monster to kill them, which I think also is very the reason. And I remember in the Megan episode you mentioned how when there's horror in a time of turmoil, horror is something that is very prominent, and I feel like this movie is so particular to society right now, just how people are so angry at each other, but then what if all the people you wished weren't around were actually
someone took care of it.
Someone took care of it. And as a human, I think if you are a person who's understands the value of life, then that's not really what you want, obviously. So
oh, one other just tiny thing, the taxidermied dog.
I know.
What was that?
I don't know.
Is that traditional? Like,
I think there might be more. I find that Europe has a lot of, and I think this movie touches a lot also on like the animalistic, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes when you see the girls asking for help and her being just letting them go. Not that I even know what she could have done. I think about that. I'm like, she wasn't going to run after the thing. That she couldn't. She was having a hard time getting home. She's been walking barefoot this entire time.
You took her phone.
Yeah.
You did this.
Yeah, you did this. There's a lot of that feeling, but also the fact that she hunts.
Yeah.
And there's this presence of, which then in the last scene when she has perfect aim,
of course,
and she knows how to kill somebody instantly, is so full circle. But I do think there is that, like, what if you started looking at everything as an animal?
Yeah.
And
I mean, this is so much a story about like the monstrous or the sort of the creatures that are dangerous, whether that's the bull, right, or the stranger killer wandering around. They seem to spare her, and it's everyone else who acts like monsters toward her. And it's just, and I think, at the end where she ends up killing him, I mean, there's something really, I don't know, ambiguous isn't a big enough word. I mean, there's something about the way they're groaning together. It's very like sexual, penetrative. Yeah, something's going on there, and I think it's like she's simultaneously like, I have to do this, and I'm fighting for my life, but also, this is the only person who's ever seen me, and I am ending their like. She's also. I mean, it's just so much emotion.
It feels like she is killing the love of her life.
I mean, kind of.
And
she weeps afterward.
Yeah, that's what's so devastating for people, because when she's trying to save the girls, they're still calling her Piggy.
I know.
It's devastating.
I hate it.
It's so devastating.
I was kind of glad that girl's hand ripped.
Me
apart.
Too. Something had to happen to her for us to just feel a little bit satisfied.
A little bit better.
But it was crazy because I really think that, I mean, I remember that being 16, the first dude that ever paid attention to me, I'm like, this is the love of my life. Yep. I'm gonna marry day one too. Yep. Not even like later on in our relationship, because it's actually, you never even have a relationship usually with those kind of feelings. You're just building it up in your head at that age, because you can't really have a relationship.
Oh, I mean, like, being so desperate just to fall in love for the first time, like feeling like I'll never have a boyfriend, it's never gonna happen, I'll die a virgin, like, and
especially her, who feels like everybody treats her like she's not worthy of even friendship.
And her family doesn't make her feel worthy of love. I mean, no one does.
Yeah.
And we're in a time right now where there's sort of this body positivity movement, but we're not there. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're like, there's still too much, honestly, just people looking for reasons to bicker with each other. And bicker is putting it mildly.
Yeah, truly. Truly. And I think also just pointing out differences mostly that is consistent. And I think, I think we do like to think that we're in a new time. But I outside of my normal life, I teach, school kids, and I teach some 16-year-olds and 15-year-olds, and there was something that I had heard that was like, they'll respect your pronouns, but they won't respect you as a human being,
right?
You know? Yeah. So like
they're still teenagers.
Yeah, they're still kids. And and so there's something really interesting about this time, especially with the internet. And that is, you know, when she is with Pedro, she says, "Did you watch the video?"
Right.
Yeah. And he said, "No, I didn't watch it. I
deleted it.
I deleted it." And it's, you know, I can't even imagine being bullied right now.
Dude, I have this thought every time I watch something like this, is I am so happy I got out of school before smartphones were a thing, because it would have destroyed me to be able to revisit that stuff and see online what people were saying and do. Just awful. I don't know how kids today do it.
No.
You poor bastards.
No, I feel bad for them as much as I can say, like, you know, we're in a messed up time. I think it's also just like, I feel bad for them. I feel, you know, I think getting older is like a weird thing, just growing in general. And I had heard something that's like, you know, you're getting older when, like when you're young, you look to the future, and then when you're getting older, you look to the past. And that was like a really weird and interesting way to put it, because I think getting older is such a privilege in general. Not a lot of people get to.
That's true.
But one of the things that I'm really glad of is that I somewhat knew a time that there wasn't social media. And that in itself, like sometimes I'm trying to do work, but I see an article that stays with me, and then I'll go back to that article like multiple times. I'm like, you've already read this article. You don't need to keep reading it if it's making you feel bad. And I think that was happening to us in the pandemic. A lot of us.
Yeah, the doom scrolling.
The doom scrolling, it's addictive. And I feel it's also just made us, I feel, more like there's so many things that we do need to see that are being put out there. But watching like cruelty to humanity is so awful and is so openly available that it's so terrible. And so I feel like this movie really touches on that, and then it really challenges like, how much can you hate a person, and do you, if you hate this person enough, are they worthy of kidnapping and death?
Right.
You know,
I mean, there's you know, I can't remember who said it. I was like, I don't think anyone deserves to die, but I think maybe there's some people who don't deserve to live, you know, and it's like, oh, that is a subtle difference. Yeah. But no, you're right. I think this is a question or a movie that raises lots of questions about humanity and the way we deal with each other. And as much as I'm sitting here like, oh, I'm so glad I got out of school before that. But, you know, I mean, it's always bad.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. I mean, there's a reason they hand us Lord of the Flies, like in America, in our classrooms, because they're like, we can't help you.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. Piggy's glasses are broken. We can't help him. I was trying to learn things about the production. Obviously, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I'm not fluent in Spanish. And so I was trying to go on to some Spanish papers and find things. But I learned a little bit. Let's see. First of all, this is a Spanish and French co-production, and like any European movie, it's like the number of like financial partners. The list is always so long, you know, because it's a combination of grants and government funding, and it's just so funny because not funny, but it's just such a indicator of the difference, right, between Hollywood system and that. And this has like Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes to it in the dusty, summery hotness of it. Like, I don't know, and the basicness of it. Like, and I also, something I didn't mention, which I like that because it's rural Spain, it is this small village. More than once, people are like, "Well, where's your phone?" It's like, "Oh, well, I don't know with the service coverage in this area." And I'm like, that is such a genius way to get around. Like, well, why didn't she just call? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, brilliant. They used a lot of rehearsals. The director loves to storyboard. She's a self-described control freak. But I'm like, well, you're a director. You should be.
You should be.
Her director of photography, Rita Noriega, they studied together at school, and they also worked on the short film, Piggy, that they made that, you know, developed this into that. Again, they wanted to really communicate this idea of a Spanish rural village, and they really wanted to make sure this didn't fall into a dramatic look. We're making a horror, but we want it to be in broad daylight. We want this to be the kind of horror, and I mean, really, some of the most awful things really do happen in broad daylight.
Yeah.
like the most upsetting.
They're fooling you when they tell you it's nighttime all the time, because I feel like it is true. And I think the worst things that can happen in broad daylight, because they usually include somebody seeing it.
Yep.
And that's the horror.
That is the
like it's
that's why people use that phrase in broad daylight.
Yeah, it's the horror. Actually, like sometimes I don't know what it was like. I listened to this radio show. I love the radio, and somebody was saying something about like something was happening in broad daylight and somebody was videoing it rather than like stopping it. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of also another place that we are right now, that it's like, yeah, it's important to have video, but it's also important to intervene if you can. Yeah. Which is, I think, also what this film questions.
Yes. No, it really does. Like, when can you? When should you?
Yeah.
When is it possible?
And when it's dark, it leaves room for, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where when it's broad daylight, it's like, oh, I know.
There's no question.
There's no question.
Yeah.
It's wild.
That's a good point. I'm thinking about half of the reason I was interested in Midsommar was just because it's a horror movie during the day. I'm like, yep, sign me up. I'm interested. They were filming this in the middle of summer, so the heat was insane. I can only imagine. And I just think the movie had a lot of great heat-related kind of moments, with the fans and the leaving the door open. Like, what do you... And that ended up being important later, of course. Like, what are you doing leaving a door open? There's a killer on the loose, And it's like, well, it's hot, hot out. They also really were focused on doing austere lighting schemes. Like, people at home can hear the people rolling the trash cans outside. I know that's being picked up. They also had to work within pandemic requirements, but like a lot of horror films, apparently, it was a really fun, safe set, and that was the thing. For Sarah, or the actress, of course, her name I should mention, the woman playing Sarah, Lauren Galán, really, I think the use the word brave, and certainly yes, it is. She's very much on display. This is like her first feature film. I mean, it's such a big role. It's lacking like a lot of the expectations and stylized stuff that horror has. And that like sometimes like fat characters are like, they're going to be the first to die, or they'll be the one that jokes are made about. And it's like, just none of that is happening here. If jokes are made, it's like we're the ones feeling the hurt. I don't know.
I also think, because this is like such a statement on and in a good way, in a statement of society, where like now watching somebody be bullied like that makes you actually think terribly of all the other people. Yes. And I feel like that's where horror has the trope of like the heavier characters like being killed first and not mattering, where this it's like you actually want the opposite the whole time. Let's have all the beautiful girls die.
Meet some horrible end. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're right. This movie pushes you into some toxic thinking. That's why it's great. I think I mentioned it earlier, but that camera shot from within the pool net that they're trying to drown her with, I thought that was just, that put us, I mean, obviously in her point of view, but the claustrophobia of that I thought was just so effective and scary.
And animalistic too, like the capture.
Yeah.
They're capturing
exactly.
her.
Yeah. I mean, it's so it's not just like what they were doing wasn't just dangerous, it was also just humiliating. Yeah. Just the most humiliating shit. And
even though technically they in that moment you actually think it's just them and her, it's still so incredibly just humiliating. And it's so interesting, because when you mentioned Dexter, Dexter like made you feel okay about all those people.
Yeah, that's true.
And where this didn't, even though you also saw the worst, ugliest part of teenage girls, the meanest part of it.
Yeah, I didn't have a good time in school.
No.
I don't know about you, but
I didn't have a good time in school
I don't think anybody does, actually. Even the people who are doing the bullying, I think, are miserable, right? Like,
I assume. Yeah, I do think some people peak, and then they realize that that's peaked. The saddest part, I think, to me. Now that I look back, I'm like, great. I'm glad I had a hard time and I didn't peak.
I have character now.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel happier with me today than ever before. And I wasn't like grossly overweight, but I was not skinny. Yeah. And I think, I felt fat you know, and there are people in my family who are, you know, overweight. And so I feel like it's so interesting that we're talking about this movie and then there's this, you know, the whale is sort of in the discourse out there. And I've heard a lot of things about it. You know, some people are like, oh, this is really maybe not a great, maybe not a great discussion point about these issues.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is an excellent alternative if you're looking for something in that world or in that subject matter. This is a great movie.
Well, and I think weight is such something that isn't talked about enough, and something that because I was an overweight child. And then at that time, I also moved to a country where I didn't speak the language, and I got here. And so it was tough. It was really hard. But I also, my family themselves would consistently comment on my weight, which is so awful. And I totally related to her when she was talking about that. And I wasn't like in this, you know, it wasn't to the extent of what this film is, but I feel like for a long time, I really, I think as a woman, when your body is changing, you gain weight, you lose weight, your body's doing all kinds of crazy shit. Like your ovaries are shedding. It's wild, and you're supposed to go to school. And not to say that you shouldn't, because you can totally do it. But I remember like first few times it's so, even like her puking when you later realize that she has her period. I used to like get so sick when you're younger, you know, when you don't know how to feel about all these things. And so I think it's a great commentary on that, because I think she, like you said, isn't a perfect character. No. It's not like glowing a light on her like this person is good and these people are bad. She's introduced to you as somebody who kills bunnies, which is so graphic. And there's photos of her like holding animals, and but nobody's deserving of that, and in any kind of way, in any kind of shape or form. And I do think that's exactly what you said. It's a great alternative to something like The Whale, because I do think this also just talks about like women's value and how people put value on you based on your weight. And even though we are in a different time, like you said, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine today about how thin people are right now, and how like being like, well, it's like it's back somehow.
Well, there's also I can't remember the name of it. It starts with an O. Someone at home will know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's what was supposed to be a drug for diabetes is now becoming a popular weight loss drug for celebrities. And
it's like I have read up on it too, and it's like and you could see who's taking it. There is no lie, because they're so thin, and it's so interesting because last night I was at an event, and I see the women who own their body, no matter what shape or size or anything, but like who are fully authentically themselves. And that to me now is what's beautiful. It's not thin. It's not you know, curvy. It's truly just dressing for your own body. And I feel like and expressing yourself, not even, you know, just expressing yourself and owning who you are. And that's like a beautiful thing. But women are not, and I imagine men too. It's just not taught. Like that, we learn health, but we never learn about like self-acceptance and the worth that people put on you based on your weight, which is so crazy.
Yeah, it kills me when I hear things. And again, people make choices. Like, you do what you feel you need to do or what's right for you. I'm not here to judge other women's choices, but you know, when you learn that like, oh, every woman is wearing Spanx like on this red carpet, guaranteed, and it's like right, we like curvy, but as long as it's in the right shape, you know, like we don't want it to be anything other than a perfect hourglass. And I'm like, that is like, again, I enjoy it. Sometimes I like a little tummy control, but like but also like I've worn pantyhose where like I got sick later because like it was too tight. And I'm like, why are we doing this to ourselves?
I know.
That's terrible.
I mean, I think that's the biggest difference between like, because when I first moved here, I went to Miami, and I remember there were times that I would wear these heels I absolutely could not walk in. And I'm like, why? And then now I look back and I I'm like, why was I torturing myself? Like, why was I literally punishing myself for just existing? And, you know, because it catered to what I thought was like the male gaze. And
we're always dressing for men.
Yeah. And
although sometimes people say that like women actually dress for each other.
I do think now.
Yeah.
I feel like now, and then you get older and you start actually, I feel like that was a big shift for me. Like when I started kind of, because I felt like my family sometimes like, you have quirky style. So
you have great style.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I love your style too. And I think that like seeing other women dress how they want to dress now is more you know, not even now, but for a while has been much more exciting to me. And I'm and then I see those girls in heels standing in line to get in a club, and I think like
again, it's like it's your choice.
It's your choice. But you know, you don't gotta. You don't gotta to fit in, which I think is what happened. I think in some ways, like, and referencing back to the movie, is like, to her they look like they have the best life. But I think those girls are also extremely, like you said, just unhappy with their own life.
Yeah.
You have to be that cruel.
But you're right about the people say social media is like a three-way mirror.
Yeah.
Like we're not supposed to know this much about each other and see these many things. So seeing all the pretty people having fun at the waterfall. And, you know, putting the Instagram filters on their faces. Like, we've all been on the other end of that, you know, where we watch people having like the greatest life ever. And, you know, and the whole FOMO and Portlandia, I think they put it best when they were just like, oh, people are just cropping out the sadness. Yeah. It's just the truth.
Absolutely.
But these images they make these indelible impressions on our minds, and it's hard. How much value do you want to give to another person's opinion, you know? Yeah.
I feel like true wealth, when I think about true success and wealth, it's having another person manage your social media account.
Yes. Oh,
I really believe it, because there's a part I feel like, as you know, somebody who's
freedom.
Yeah, like not having to think about it anymore, because I do think exactly what you said. It's like no matter what, that stuff lives inside you, and a lot of the work that you have to do, even like having shared about my own experience, is like shedding all that stuff. Yeah. And I do think that it starts with being seen, which is why I think in a way you're kind of rooting for this love affair with this killer who you don't know might kill her, but at the same time it's like the first time that she's felt that, and it makes you feel that.
And how could you not feel something at least conflicted about it? I agree. I mean, he's not husband material, but
I would not.
No,
I'd say
that's a big no.
He's a bad boy.
He's a bit of a bad boy, but you know, how many guys are there in this little village? You know,
and it's actually kind of funny now that you said that, because I think we all first fall for the bad boy type.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But this person, is a murderer
generally. Yeah. Yes. I mean, she went real far on the spectrum. Yeah, you know, but. Makes sense. I mean, and just like, of course you'd be thinking about that later. Of course you would. This was filmed in like a rural Spanish village known as Villanueva de la Vera in the Extremadura, which is, I guess, an area. I learned today, I did not know, guys, that Spain does not have like a sort of, they don't do like a federal government. It's not really a federation. It's like a collection of autonomous states. And so I'm learning things. That's all I'm saying. And this was filmed in one of those states, further west, kind of on the border of Portugal. And anyway, looked beautiful.
It looked beautiful.
I really would.
Visually stunning, the film in its entirety.
And I don't know anything about like lenses and all that stuff. Like I know it's people have there are particular decisions made, but they wanted to go for this like this sort of dusty, gritty-ish look. Yeah. But it looks very also clean and modern. I mean, there's something about that pink in the titles that just felt like, oh, this feels like a fresh fucking movie. Like,
no, for sure. And I think, too, it's like, it's very, I mean, feminine. It's very feminine. And even though it feels rural, it feels, like you said, very modern, very current.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that like, what we were talking about with the online bullying, it's like she has to deal with the small town traditional mentality and a hyper modern level of bullying. So it's just no relief. Yeah, there's no relief. Poor woman. We do have a couple of reviews here.
Oh yeah, let's read them.
We can look. I hardly ever print stuff out, so this is very exciting. I wanted to mention this one from The Guardian. Yeah, one of the things they mentioned is issues such as body shaming are explored without didacticism. I don't know if I said that right. But basically what we were saying earlier, like it's talking about these body issues, but without like making it like a teacherly experience, like a polemic or like, oh, you know, this is how and this is why. It's like, no, it's not that at all. It's specific and detailed in how it builds moods and atmosphere. Carlota Pereda's spiky Spanish horror understands girlish anxiety so well that it could comfortably be a coming-of-age pick. So, yeah.
And this one in the New York Times says the teenager Sarah is comfortable with sharp knives and death, which is what we talked about when it shows photos of her hunting. And she helps out in her father's butcher shop. After all, they often hunt together. And we watch a trio of mean girls mercilessly mock Sarah because she's overweight. It's natural to expect the brutal payback that the poster of the Spanish movie depicts. It's true because in the poster, the lead is drenched in blood. Which is another clue.
Yeah, she's looking real like 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah,
she looks like an action hero in the imagery. Yes.
Almost like a Grindhouse.
Yes, totally.
Like character.
Totally.
And it says, but while Piggy does take a gory turn, it also takes a left one. The director Carlota Pereda carefully sets up our expectations only to subvert them.
Yeah,
it's true. Even with it's interesting because when I saw the poster, when you see the poster, it's very bloody, but then it opens at a butcher shop. So you kind of don't know if this is going to be a horror movie based on people or animal.
I think we're definitely set up to think, oh, she works in a butcher shop. This girl gonna kill somebody with a knife.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't.
You also think it's going to be the ultimate revenge film.
Right.
Which it's not.
It's not. I mean, I think you could make a comparison to Carrie, but it's not. It's so different from that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, why did I make that comparison?
No, but it does. I think you're absolutely right. And it's the bullying too, and
the mother at home.
Yeah.
Piper Laurie's so scary in that movie.
Oh my gosh, so scary. And I think the thing about revenge movies that are very interesting sometimes to me, I almost think that for you to get revenge, you have to come into your power in such a way that you're pushed into it.
Yeah.
And I feel like this person, which I think Carrie being who she is, not to say again that like, you know, thin women don't get bullied because they also do so much. But I just saying, like, this person is so ignored. She's so doesn't have a voice that it almost feels like she would, if she had the opportunity and that man hadn't shown up, she would have probably not done anything.
Oh no,
she's a passive person because she is just waiting. You could tell she's just waiting for it all to be done.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly how she'll get out, but she's never cruel to them.
Yeah.
And you almost feel like she almost has some hope that her friend will come back to her.
Yeah. Yeah, you do get that feeling, but she is not coming back.
No, she's not coming back.
Yeah. Here's one from IndieWire if you want to.
Oh, there's one that says right after her tormentors steal her clothes while she's enjoying a solo swim at the local outdoor pool, Sarah watches them being abducted by a mysterious stranger. That man, hulking and grunting, is an agent of chaos. His motives unknown, his actions seemingly arbitrary. He is simultaneously terrifying and fascinating to Sarah, who has plenty of reasons to at least fantasize about a violent retribution. And then this you highlighted, but she is not the victim turned avenging angel, which is what we just talked about, so often found in horror movies or thrillers, and instead emerges as a complicated protagonist who makes mistakes and is not always easy to like.
Yeah.
So is her well-intentioned mother, who thinks Sarah must diet to avoid taunts. Yeah, it says Pereda, who also wrote the script, is not afraid of a psychological and moral ambiguity. It's obvious that she's on Sarah's side. That bullying scenes are much hard. Yeah, the bullying scenes are much harder to watch than the bloody ones.
It's very true.
It's very, very true. It's brutal when you're watching her get bullied. It's really brutal. But she also knows that shame, guilt, and secrecy fester into messy situations and messy people. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with all this woman. Her name is Elizabeth Vincentelli.
There you go.
I agree with you, lady.
Yeah. One more here. I'll just play from otrocines.com. One of those films that's so consciously extreme, disfigured, and shocking that it's almost impossible it'll generate a unanimous response, even within the same person. And I feel like that is exactly the experience. I feel like it's like, and I love that it's nuanced. I just like that, you know, we get so many things that are lacking in nuance, and this is just, oh, it's so good. I'm like, you picked such a good one. I'm like, damn.
Great.
Oh, I loved it.
I'm so excited. I do think, you know, for me as a cinephile, I would say like the power of movies is, we were talking about this before, is how they stay with you and how they make you feel and how they push you out of, you know, your consistent way of thinking. And I think and they teach you something. They teach you something about another experience. And most effectively, those that teach you something without wanting to teach you something.
Yeah.
And this film is definitely that. And if you're a genre fan, then this is
Excellent choice.
An excellent choice.
Oh, yeah.
I was like watching it by myself a little bit. It was dark and I was like, do I want to do this by myself? It was also like last week it was raining, so it was like extra scary.
Yeah.
But I was so it was so satisfying too. It was so and it also at times make you feel so frustrated because you actually don't know what the whole movie you're conflicted as to what is the right thing.
I mean, what choices does she have?
Yeah.
I mean, this girl is so isolated and so stuck.
Yeah.
And I think any person can relate to that feeling of like, people see me the way I don't want to be seen.
Yeah. And also seeing things situations where you feel helpless. Also when you are consistently being told you're helpless.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that's the thing. And also being blamed for everything. She's always blamed for everything. So it's like, why is she going to go tell them about this?
And it does feel kind of like everybody seems to, like, they're like, well, she won't fight back. You know, it's like people blame her or seem to put all this like shit on her because they're like, well, she can't feel it, you know? And it's like, no, all of it. Like, she perceives everything, but it's like, no, our parents drive me nuts.
I will say that I love how it ended with her in that very intimate moment with our hottie.
Hell yeah.
Pedro. I was like, in, you know, and so that
like,
was,
it's over now.
Yeah. He's like, you're safe.
Yeah.
And that's the first moment you see her feel comforted by another person.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
And I don't need those two to end up together, but in my mind, they are together.
Interesting.
In my head, I'm like, they're going to, he sees her now.
But I mean, after you see a woman covered in blood like that, it's like, she's a superhero. You can't go back from that.
I mean, come on. I thought she was incredible. And it's funny because, you know, that image of her from the end is the image that's used in the marketing. Yeah. So in some ways it's like, we got there.
Yeah.
You know, we finally get to the scene. Some other movies that came out around the same time. Now, this didn't have a wide release, so it's not as if, you know, if I went up to Regal and was like, do I want to see Halloween Ends, which was #1 at the box office. Smile was #2, Lyle Lyle Crocodile, The Woman King, Amsterdam, Don't Worry Darling, Barbarian, Bros, Triangle of Sadness. It's all the Oscar race stuff. You know, this came out in it was October 14th, 2022. So right in that pocket of the award season stuff. Although I don't think that this in any way is trying to
be an award season movie.
And genre always gets dissed anyway.
It sucks.
Like, horror is not treated seriously. Comedy is barely acknowledged.
Okay, but if Quentin Tarantino had made this movie, it would be nominated.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? I think
you're right.
I think he almost has made like genre okay, because it's a genre movie, but is it really?
I mean, that's just it. I don't like. I remember being in college and people like talking about genre fiction, and some professors were like, I don't like that term because science fiction is ultimately supposed to be about the human condition. Every one of these things, you know, fantasy, again, is about the human condition. Like, ultimately, it always comes back to that. Even if your main characters are talking cats or something, you know, like, it doesn't matter.
Well, and I think that this has that kind of, like, Quentin Tarantino vibe where it's like brutal, and I think in a way it makes violence very okay because the story and the trauma and the society aspect of it is really the driving character here. And so I think this is when we say that more women should be nominated. That like, you know, I think I love that we're seeing more films like this because you know, there's trauma can do really messed up things, and it's important to talk about. But I wish that it were, and those movies are you know, I did see that it was playing at the Alamo Drafthouse, which I know you said before, and I'll say too, it's like you'd have to pay me a lot of money to go downtown.
It's like I love the concept, but it was just like the whole experience of going downtown and then like we park here and then like we walk like a fucking, I don't know. I sound like a whiner, but
it's not a whiner at all.
Ask anyone in LA, Alamo Drafthouse is a pain in the ass to get to.
It's like you love being there, but you hate getting there. It's like exactly what it is.
You just need to hire people to pick me up and bring me to the theater.
Oh, I believe like, and then literally get out of the car, open the door, and carry me up into the theater.
This week's director, Carlota Pereda, she was born 1975 in Madrid, Spain. This isn't meant to be a shitty comment. I expected her to be younger. Now, this is a woman who has had a lot of experience working in television and developing and screenwriting and directing some television as well. So, but she was like, I love collaborating. But she was also acknowledging that, but I wanted to do something in my own voice. And now that she's now working on another film and then hopefully another. And I can relate to that in the way that, like, I mean, not that I've made something, but working on projects that you like your colleagues, you like the vision, you like the collaborative process. This is a great job. But there's still this little part of you that really wants to do your own shit. And that was 100% what motivated this. Also, it was inspired when she saw a girl at a pool, overweight girl by herself. And she wondered to herself, like, I wonder, you know, if she doesn't want to be seen. And that night she went home and wrote out like a short script, and that's where the short came from.
Wow.
And she happens also, this place where it was filmed, this is where she spends her summers. So that was kind of, and she wrote it all there. And anyway, I like this woman. She studied school at what's known collectively as the Madrid Film School. It has a much longer name, of course, ECAM, and School of Cinematography and Audiovisual of the Community of Madrid.
Wow.
Nice big name. She, like I said, she worked in TV. She developed scripts for a drama series called Periodistas, which I guess was about
journalists.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So you know. Thank you. And she made a short called Las Rubias, the Blondes, and then she made Piggy. She's now. There was also another short she made called There Will Be Monsters. I'm not sure what it's about. I would love to try to see these shorts somewhere.
Yeah.
I hope this woman continues to get opportunities and attention, because I would love for Criterion to do what they do best and, you know, make those like, here are all the shorts that you've never seen by this great director. So I'm just waiting. I'm biding my time. We're going to get them. Piggy, of course, is very well received. And the short that it was based on won the Goya.
Oh, yeah.
For best short film. What else do I have here? Blah, blah, blah. She talked about, she said, I wrote from my reptilian brain. And she said, I wanted to forget about like all the rules, the story structure, all that stuff. Because when you work in TV, that's all it is, right? Mm-hmm. And she was like, I really just wanted to live and be with this character and think about them. She also mentioned that she's really obsessed with sound, which I think the early scene, I mean, we hear the sound of flies buzzing. We hear that cleaver, you know, I mean, it's like there is a really wonderful soundscape established, and there's a couple of like little, I don't know, there was some moment where you hear a scream, and then it's like, and a woman's floating in a pool, and you're like, oh, is she dead? And it's like, oh, no, it's just a pool scene. This woman's just floating on her back. Like, I like that fake out.
Yeah, me too. I also like when she's hearing them talking about the party in the beginning. I don't know why I get scared of eavesdropping sometimes, just because what if sometimes, like I said, I teach. And if I go to the bathroom in a school I teach, I get so terrified that students are going to come in and start talking about me and I'm going to hear it. And I just don't want to. I just simply don't want to. Love me or hate me. It's none of my business. It's kind of thing that I'm like, please. So I also thought the sound of that was actually really, really great. Because you start off just knowing she's missing out. Yeah. You know, and then, and she... they're just standing in front of the shop and she has to be there because she works, so she can't walk away from it. She has to hear about all the cool things that everybody else who's living is doing, and it's devastating. No,
it's I don't know, it's funny. I feel like there's kind of maybe a micro film trope of the kid that has to work in the business with the family, and you don't have the freedom, but then eventually at some point it's like, get out of here, go live your life. Except she never gets that moment. It's like, go buy a light. The light just burned out. Don't worry about your brother sleeping in the back.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, totally fine. One thing she said, I thought that was really interesting, is she said, there is another character I really care about, and that's the audience. You know, and the audience's relationship to Sarah is like a whole other, what you're saying. I mean, this is a movie that leaves you wrestling with questions. It doesn't give you answers, which is the best. We love that. We love that. Who is your best supporting player?
Oh, my best supporting player.
I have the cast here too.
I love Pedro.
Pedro's good.
I love Pedro because he's an unexpected hero.
Yes,
I'd say.
Yeah,
and I thought that actor, he had such a clear. He was such an interesting character because he made me feel like he was raised right.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I just felt like he just was a really good guy. Yeah. And he, even though he was obviously a hottie and had a lot of like beauty privilege for sure.
Absolutely.
He made you feel like he kind of, to me, he's the one who transitioned the most within the story. Like,
you're right.
He really, he started off and you think he's an asshole because he's hanging out with all these mean girls. And then by the end, you love him. Yeah. And he provides her the most safety. Yeah. He's the only person who's actually there for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me,
listens to her.
What about you? Who's your best supporting player?
This might be an odd one. It's a small role, but Elena, who's Claudia's mother, that scene where she comes into their house, and although, we have these complex feelings about her daughter, but ultimately, that's a mother whose girl's gone, you know, but I guess remains to be seen. Maybe it was also just the dress.
She was amazing.
I liked her.
I also do think that there was this moment where the other parents of some of the other girls, when they're looking for them in the woods, and they go, they're probably just at a party, and she says, I don't know about your daughters, but my daughter doesn't just disappear.
Yeah.
So,
and like, I'll go look for them by myself. I don't care. Yeah. I'll do it myself. Like, such a mother. Like, fuck all of you.
Almost like the believing women thing, because the other families all have husbands, and then she looks like she's just a single mom.
That's true.
And she's being pushed to be like, you're crazy. Your kids probably run away. There's nothing wring. It's so much gaslighting.
It's so much.
And also, I think that she comes to her house because I think that's when you really realize how close they used to be. Because she says we're not friends anymore, and she, doesn't know where else to look.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of the parents and adults are pretty oblivious about what's going on, with kids. But again, that feels very real. Yeah. I mean, the show Freaks and Geeks, part of what was so great about that was the times where they're at the kitchen table and there's this sense that the parents can do nothing to help you. And that's not totally true. I mean, they can say things, they can comfort you, but ultimately you have to go back to that institution on your own 2 feet the next day. And it's horrible. It's the reason it's called the 12-year sentence. I mean,
it's awful.
Yeah.
Truly.
I mean, I loved learning. I did like school, but I didn't like being picked on, you know, to put it nicely. And I'm not saying this to be like, this is the most awful thing, but I was, I guess, bullied is the right word, but I was bullied by girls when I was in 5th grade to the point where I actually developed eczema, like on my arms, like stress induced. And, at the time I was just like going through it, whatever. You're just one foot in front of the other. But now I look back and I'm like, God, that must have freaked my parents out so bad. That must have pissed them off so much because like they can't do anything, but your daughter's having a physical stress response to this shit.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be like, oh, poor little me.
No, but
this,
true.
But I, to this day, and I've said this to people too, it's like, if I hear someone laughing, it's like, are they laughing at me?
Oh, I hate it. It's true. And I do feel like what's even crazier is that you would, what is the right parent response? Is it to be like the tar mom and show up at the school and threaten a child? Like what is the right thing? I do remember that there was this one time I was getting bullied really, really badly. And my mom started getting involved in the worst. It just obviously, it made it so much worse. Yeah. And so there's like it's exactly what you said. They can comfort you, but then also your attendance is like part of your grade. So you got to go back to school. And I do think that's the hardest part about being a teenager is that you have to go back.
Yeah. No, it very much felt like you get to a place where you're old enough to understand that like it's just a legal requirement that keeps me here.
Yeah.
Or, the idea that I'm trading, it's delayed gratification. Like I'm doing what I can now, but I'll get to college. College was like where I was going to, I was thinking about college from like 8th grade, not even like freshman year. I was like, let's just hurry up. And then you get there and it's like, yes, this is better, but it also was just kind of like high school light.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also what's so challenging is, like when you become an adult, I feel like when I'm in a space that people are not kind to me, the best thing I could do is remove myself.
Remove yourself, yeah.
But as a child, you don't have that option.
Generally not.
And then if your parents aren't listening to you, which is also the worst case scenario, is like, how do you deal with that? And I feel so much for so many people who continue to have like stress responses in their body because especially when you can't fight back, I feel like it comes out through your body.
Oh yeah. People say like, oh, it's fight or flight. It's like, there's another one.
Yeah.
Where it just churns inside you and stirs you up. It's bad. I mean, it's funny when I think about, I don't know like the exact day that things cleared up and didn't, but when I think about it, I went on to 6th grade and I met and made like one of the best friends of my life. Mm-hmm. Being seen by somebody, it makes a big fucking difference.
Yeah, I think that's why you hear about people who like get in abusive relationships when they're in a time of hardship because it seems so counterintuitive because if you're already in a hard time, then how are you going to end up with somebody toxic? But the thing is anybody at that point counts.
Yeah. Plus,
anybody who's giving you time and listening to you counts. I feel like it's in something that happens that's a very like Anglo-American thing is like when you're 18 you're out, where I feel like in these other cultures, and I speak it from my personal experience, is like very much about you staying home.
Yeah.
And and she, I imagine for Sarah, it's like her dad has that butcher business and he expects her to take over. And so they probably are not even thinking about college for her.
Right.
It's not even something that ever comes up when you're assuming that she's kind of at the age where she's getting near there. Her life is working at the butcher shop. And so I think it's also what your point that was made of like the privilege of people whose parents don't need that. And so they can go off, they can party, they can do all these things, but she's got to stay back. And so there is no expiration date of when it'll get better.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons we feel so trapped in her character is like she lives in this village. She also, not only does she live in this village, but she has this massive responsibility, which is this family business.
Yeah. In a small community and a homogenous one, people find a new way. They find a new hierarchy to build and create. And it's just get away from hierarchies, people.
Please do. Even if they're in your own family.
Oh, yeah.
Truly. I'm always, I hate, I don't want to say like supporting this, but like my dad owned the business and our biggest turmoil within our relationship is me not wanting to be a part of that business. He never encouraged me to go to college. Because it was just like, I've built this business so you could have it, even if it's not what you want. And so it's a
different mentality.
It's a different mentality. And I feel like that was very present for me in this film. And it's a trap. mentality. Like in a way, she's already trapped. She's trapped in this body she doesn't identify with. She's trapped in this town. She's trapped in this house, and I think it also goes to like the name of the movie, which is Piggy. Yeah. It's like, you know, we trap these animals and we eat them and we feed off them. And I feel like everybody's feeding off her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine she's getting even paid.
Yeah.
She's probably getting paid, like, they give her money to go to the store to buy something.
Yeah,
but like, she's not, you know. Yeah. She works for free for the family. Yeah. So it's not even like building your own independent wealth, which is really interesting.
And a community that size, I mean, that's a precise economy, you know?
Right. And a lot of like Latin and Spanish films, and like we talk a lot about Almodovar. Yeah, it's in there, like the responsibility of family. And then I think in a lot of ways, when family doesn't want to put responsibility on you of your loyalty of taking care of them, they often do that with like a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think parents do influence like what you're interested in. Like it was so interesting to me because my parents took me to my dad, you know, was a single dad when my parents got divorced, and then he's in Mexico, so I would go. They split custody, which is also very challenging because I would spend all year in school in Miami, and then as soon as like summer hit, I couldn't hang out with those friends, and it was like tough because then I'd come back and sometimes they were hanging out with different new people.
Yeah, you've missed jokes, you've missed parties,
you've missed all these things, and so but my dad would drop me off at the movies while he had to work, and I would go. I saw, you know, so many movies in the theater, and and what a gift, because I didn't have a way to go to film school, and so I couldn't afford it, and so it was
your film school.
It was my film school. I felt like because Mexico shows movies from Spain, from France, from here, you could watch anything at any time. And I remember being like 12, and I went to like a repertory theater, and they showed Amelie, and I was like, holy cow, like this is amazing. I had never seen anything like that, and so I got to see a lot of different cultures, and I'm so grateful for it. And then, you know, they also took me to shows, and for a while there, my parents worked at a television network, and I got to be in a studio.
Oh, amazing.
And so I feel like, you know, it was so crazy to me when I chose to be an artist and they were so opposed to it, that I was like, wait, but like, you guys have taken me to all these places that are fully art driven. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
I mean, the thought of being a child walking, or I don't know how old you were, but walking into a studio and just realizing there's whole careers in this room. Yeah. There are multiple jobs, and people get paid to do this.
Yeah, and it's based on like your ideas and your inspiration, and I think that's really exciting. And I love collaborative work, and so but I also, when you mentioned that about the director, it's like I also feel the same way sometimes, where I'm like, I want to have my own.
You wrote Mariposa,
yeah,
you know, and are in it. People should go check that out.
Yeah, and I feel like it's still, you know, very much like, oh, what's my and I have other projects where I've written with other people, and I love those projects, but I also think that there are stories within me that like I really truly understand, and I want to hear other people's ideas on them, but I also want to honor them as I think them. And I think a lot of times when you're co-writing or co-creating, especially for television, because you end up having writers' rooms, and
it's very negotiation.
You're compromise some ideas, and you know, and I feel like that's what I like about this film. It really does feel like it's one person's vision.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of this industry is made to it gives you the class system right away. It's like, I'm the person who decides, and then you have to compromise your vision based on what I think is right, and I'm in this power position to this person, and then there's this other person who's in this power position to this person, and when you go through all the chains of that, then you end up, by the time you get to where you want to be, is your vision even present at that point?
Oh yeah.
That's why I think when we talk about like Europe and even Mexico, right? Like when you think about, it's so funny because people talk about how all the filmmakers who are Latin who have been nominated are Mexican, and I honestly think the reason why is because they're making their movies based on a grant system.
Yeah.
And so the grant system allows you to have freedom. Yeah. And when you're here, I mean, the things that you hear, and I'm an actor and a writer, the notes you get back, and it's very disheartening. But if you are also you're trying to live, and so you're like, okay, well, where do I compromise this? And it's a catch-22, and I often struggle with it. I often am like, okay, well, maybe I'm just gonna do theater, and I'm not gonna try to play into the system of like the audition system, or because there's in these talks, some of the shocking things that have come up is like people telling actors to like record their own voice as the reader and then put it into your tape, so you're essentially acting by yourself. And of course there's the argument that Tom Cruise did it with a volleyball, but at the same time he had a director there who was working with him, and so at some point, where does the integrity of the work go? And I think that that's something that Hollywood, it's an amoral system. It's a number system, and it's very not true. It doesn't value art, even though as soon as art is made and it's celebrated, they're like, oh,
we make art,
and
we care about artists. And
so it's I think that is why films like Everything Everywhere All at Once should be continued to be celebrated, and Tar, and because these films, I think especially Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? It's an incredibly inclusive film. I think I'm a big person on, I talk often, and I have a nonprofit, El Cine. You can follow us at Somos El Cine, that talks about inclusion, Latin inclusion, particularly in film. And I feel like what I loved about Everything Everywhere All at Once was that it's not about what culture it is. It's the film itself. There's a very present culture, but it goes further than that. It's about human relationships and like belonging and acceptance. And I think that anybody anywhere can relate to that. And
everyone everywhere all at once.
Yes, everyone everywhere all at once. And so I think,
no, it was beautiful.
That if somebody came in and they hadn't, if you haven't seen the Daniels, their previous work, you should see Swiss Army Man and a lot of the other stuff that they did, but they're shorts. But I can't imagine somebody going into a studio and saying, and there's these rocks, and somebody not be like, what? Like if they were not already had not made a movie before that was wild and then had done significantly well. So I think luckily there are production companies and producers who are I think starting to do that.
That's it exactly. I think producers. It's producers who understand, who want to work with interesting people and who want to give them the space to do interesting work. And it's not like it never happens here, but the thing I've heard routinely from people is like, listen, in Europe, you can make whatever you want in the sense that like it can be about anything, but finding money is trickier. And so, Piggy, which I would watch again.
Yeah, I would watch again too.
I'm gonna watch it again. But I didn't think of it firsthand as like, oh, what a like sort of shoestring concept. There's a lot of outside, a lot of walking in the dust and stuff that minimal lighting. I mean, it feels very, the word they used was austere. And I feel conflicted about saying this because I'm like, sometimes, limitations can be good for creativity. But I don't think that that's like a reason to just be like, well, let's cut off your arm and see how you do.
No, and I think more so than limitations, it's here is sellability. Which is that's what I think the biggest conflict of it is. It's like if you're doing everything with sellability, it ends up being it's hard. Because if you're going by algorithm, like that's how you have TikTokers acting now who can't act, and everybody knows they can't act. And they continue to get roles, and you're like, but did you guys see the last movie? And it doesn't matter because people are still gonna watch it. And so I think I know there's a change. I feel like there's a change coming. I love
I'm there with you.
All the women who are like being celebrated this year. I love that it's, I want to see a woman in her 50s, 60s win an Oscar because I continue to win an Oscar. I mean, Meryl Streep's done it multiple times, but
Meryl Streep.
She's the greatest of all.
Kate Blanchett's like our new Meryl's. Well, not new.
You know who Kate Blanchett is to me?
Who?
Our new, Katharine Hepburn.
Well, she did play her.
Yeah.
And won an Oscar for playing her. But no, I can see that.
She's just so handsome.
Kate Blanchett, someone who came from theater.
Yeah.
She was like, I was given a role in a film. I thought, well, this will never last. I'm already too old.
Yeah. But Almodovar, who we talk so much about, all of those people are in theater. Antonio Banderas was in a show one night. He happened to go. Yep. So many of the people who end up being celebrated were people who come from the theater tradition. You have to have some.
No, Streep came from a repertory theater. It's like when people talk about how versatile she is, it's like, right, because I always played a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like that's the job.
Yeah.
And I get that some people have a vibe and, old Hollywood, if you saw Humphrey Bogart in a movie, he was playing a Humphrey Bogart type character. Yeah. The characters were written to be like the people. Now I think not now, but the method, right, came in and sort of blew that apart a bit. And, being able to do multiple things. But I feel like we've kind of backslid a bit.
Yeah.
Where people are like, I can't believe that he was Mr. Darcy and he's Tom Wamsgans. And it's like, it's called acting.
I know. It's really shocking. And it's... I think, like Judi Dench, another one that came from repertory theater. I mean, so many. I mean, you can...
Ian McKellen, I mean...
Yeah. And even, when you watch The Crown, Vanessa Kirby.
Oh, yeah.
I love her.
I love her so
theater.
much.
It's like, that's why I think a lot of the British procedurals and the British shows, and when somebody said to me, why do you think, like, Australian people and the Brit. Also, another person who's incredible is the little girl who plays Ellie. She's not little, actually. I'm not gonna minimize her because she's a giant. Is the and I'm not gonna gender her either because I think they are non-binary. But plays Ellie in The Last of Us.
Oh, Bella Ramsey.
Yeah, Bella Ramsey. A phenomenal powerhouse actor. And I feel that in England there's just more respect for the work, and so I think that's why a lot of these people come here and they do well, or often I think they get start working there where there's value, and then they
it's a weird,
take more things.
It's like out here they need proof of concept for everything.
Yeah, and they're also always trying to label what it is. I feel like every time you walk into a room, it's like, oh, you're a young Rosie Perez. Oh, you're a young Salma Hayek. Oh, you're a young, and it's always like, damn, why can't I just be myself? And not be compared to something, and so I think
that's got to be aggravating.
It's aggravating, and it's okay because I think it's again like what you said, people need proof of concept. But I also think what's exciting about Bella Ramsey is they were saying in an interview they can be anything. They can be absolutely anything. Yep. And they're also even though the character they play is a woman or a girl, they are totally almost genderless, and that's really exciting. So I think
the species is about to get very interesting. Like, we're tearing a lot of concepts down that need to be torn down, and again, I'm paraphrasing the Kaufman speech at the WGA, but I mean, we have to tell story, like we have to tell truth in a sea of lies. Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting that he just was like, I prioritized the wrong things, and I regret it now. And I don't want to do that anymore. And I agree with you. I maintain hope that we're on the cusp of another kind of Hollywood renaissance, the way we saw happened in the end of, the great Hollywood era where studio systems were bloated and out of touch. And then you have Easy Rider, right, come and like blow a bunch of people's minds. And that wasn't the only thing, but the big shift. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde, is a big one too. And,
and I do think that it's coming, and I do like to look at all the points and see all the points that are being made, because I think it's important to listen to one another and understand. But I do think that with the amount of content that there is out there, we can support shows that artists that are trying to make art, and then we can also support, the other things. Like I sometimes watch random weird reality television, because sometimes I need a non-brainer thing.
Sometimes we need some trash. I love some trash. Are you kidding?
I love some trash too.
I love trash.
And so that will always be. It's like when people compare things, and I think this goes back to what we're talking about with this film. It's like you don't always have to compare things, because one person exists in a different way than you doesn't mean that you can't exist.
No, I mean, it's said that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And stop doing it to yourselves, everyone.
Yeah.
I would watch this again.
Yes,
you would watch
I
this
would
again.
watch this again too.
Did we already do that? I can't remember.
I think we did. But
we've been chatting for a bit.
Yes. Thank you so much for having
of course.
me.
See, Mariana and I haven't seen each other in a while, so that's why this is like going to be a long episode. But that's great, though.
It's my favorite podcast.
You're so nice.
It's so nice. Well, I think also because we met with this love of film, so
that's
now
true.
Even though sometimes we are not chatting, I feel as though we
are
are discussing film.
That's what I like. A part of me is like, oh, is that super arrogant of me to be like, well, if you miss me, listen to the show.
I love it, and you should, because it's true. And Chelsea, who I've never met, also feels like another one of my great friends, because I love the way I feel like, there's nothing more fun than discussing a film.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's like we're here for joy.
Yeah.
We're doing it for the love of the game.
Exactly.
So thank you for joining us. This was incredible. You can follow us on social media at Fresh Movie Pod. Drop us an email at abreathofreshmovie@gmail.com. Love email. Seriously. Write to me. And do you want to plug anything or check anything out?
Just
El Cine,
follow maybe. El Cine at Somos El Cine. We do our goal is, we're a 501c3, and our goal is to provide accessible film education. So we have monthly free film workshops.
Those are amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, like this weekend we're having and probably not this weekend when you hear this, but we're having a stop motion workshop. We have styling workshops. We're just kind of trying to educate everybody on positions you could trades of filmmaking and making it free.
That's really, really nice.
Yeah, we also have screenings.
I follow you on Instagram. There's so much going on. I'm just like, I've been so out of the loop.
No, it's fun.
But it's exciting. I'm glad, because I feel like I remember when you started this, and I it's only just picked up speed and gained love, and it's great. It's wonderful to see.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. All right.